All right, guys, it's draft recap time. Hopefully this pile of junk computer holds up for me here during this process. Had some technical difficulties yesterday, so I apologize. I wasn't able to get it out to you guys on Monday as I had previously intended, but I think this is going to be a good edition of the Commish Dish, the draft recap edition. I'm going to go in order of where you picked in the draft, and I'm going to talk a little bit about your first pick, and then I'm going to tell you who your best pick in the draft was and who your worst pick in the draft was based on relative value at the slot that you took them, and a few other factors too, mostly just what my opinion is. So we're starting out with Reese, House Tyrell, obviously aptly named from Game of Thrones / Tyrell Williams on his team. Picking first overall, David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell. I mean, honestly, who cares? You can't go wrong either way. Great spot to be in. Personally, I had Bell on top of my board, but we'll get to that in a minute. And but David Johnson, obviously an absolute monster. Reese, your best pick was Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is going to be a stud even as a rookie. He's very unique talent. Worst pick, though, was Leonard Fournette. He's tied to a really bad offense. They don't have much of an offensive line. I just don't see the Jags being a team that scores a whole bunch. And Fournette, there's better picks on the board at the time, especially considering you were going to nab McCaffrey there at the turn, too. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. Pretty stupid pick, but you salvaged the rest of your draft pretty well. Moving on to myself, I was the Commish, Judge Fudge, picking second overall, which allowed me to – that was just about my dream scenario because, like I said, I did have Le'Veon Bell on top of my board. Le'Veon Bell is going to be an absolute monster this season if he stays healthy. You can't really project for injury for any player, but Le'Veon Bell was definitely who I wanted to get. He's who I targeted, so really lucked out picking second overall. My best pick, though, was Doug Martin. You guys, I don't know if you guys forgot that he plays or maybe the 3-game suspension was too much for you. But, I mean, the muscle hamster is the man, and I think I absolutely stole him at the draft price that I got him at. There really wasn't – everybody went so running back heavy. There was nothing left at running back when I got Doug Martin. So my worst pick, Steven Gostkowski, just was more of a spite pick to Jared, so Jared couldn't have him. But thankfully, Jared didn't draft him in the 8th round this year, so that's good. But, yeah, worst pick, Steven Gostkowski. He probably will spend maybe a week or two on my team before he's in free agency. Picking third overall, Tony Sr., Pack Attack, took Aaron Rodgers with the 3rd overall pick. Obviously not what I would have done there, not what anybody else in the league would have done there. But, you like the guy, go get him. And that he wasn't going to get him on the way back, certainly. So that was his only chance to get Aaron Rodgers. So a bit of a homer pick there, but still, it was his only chance of getting him. So best pick, T.Y. Hilton, 5th round. 5th round for T.Y. Hilton. Boy, that is some serious value there and helped salvage him taking Aaron Rodgers in the 1st. Worst pick, though, 1 round earlier, C.J. Anderson. Yuck. Stupid, horrible pick. Everybody knows you don't draft a Denver running back. Everybody knows that, except apparently the guy that's been playing fantasy football since the Stone Age back here. You have anything to say about your C.J. Anderson pick while I got you here?
CJ's the man, MVP.
He's got nothing to – I mean, come on. C.J. Anderson's awful. So there you go, C.J. Anderson leading him to miss the playoffs this year. Joe Garbade, Dalton's Freaks. Julio Jones, 4th overall, kind of a meh pick. Yeah, okay, I can see it. Although, personally, I'm not a huge fan of the Falcons' offense this year. They were historically efficient last year. They're due for some regression. And if you regress any further on touchdowns from Julio Jones, they might start counting negatively. The guy just doesn't score touchdowns. It's absolutely ridiculous. So picking him 4th overall over the safety of an Antonio Brown or the upside of a Mike Evans, I really didn't see it. I didn't think it was a great pick, but it's one of those that's meh, okay. Best pick, Jay Ajayi, late into the 2nd round was a steal based on where you got him. Jay Ajayi could be an absolute monster for you. Do not listen to Steve's trade offers for him. Just hang on. He's going to be good. Worst pick, Joe, the problem I have with doing your worst pick is you had so many of them that I had to actually do a 3-way tie for you, because they're all this bad. And I'll explain. It's not that the players are bad. It's the context of where you took them, what was on the board when you took them, and what you already had. So you took Bilal Powell in the 4th round, was after taking Ty Montgomery in the 3rd. Really stupid. Obviously, who would you rather have, Bilal Powell or Drew Brees? We discussed this after the draft. Obviously, you'd much rather have Drew Brees, but you took Bilal Powell anyway. That was a terrible, terrible pick. But only to be outdone in the 6th round by your Pierre Garçon selection after you already had Julio Jones and Demaryius Thomas and Larry Fitzgerald. You draft a guy that's basically a worse version of all 3 of those in the 6th round. Pierre Garçon, you could have had a little later, for one thing. And for 2, why don't you draft a guy with some upside, you dope? I mean, what are you thinking about? You draft. I mean, enjoy your 900 yards and 6 touchdowns, I guess. And are you ever going to put Pierre Garçon in your lineup over any of the 3 of those other guys, no matter what the matchup is? No, you'll never play him. So that was stupid. But all of that kind of pales in comparison. Chiefs D, first defense off the board, and I'm okay with that because they're a great D. But how do you draft a defense first? You don't know that they're playing at New England on opening night. That's why you get poor marks for that. At New England on opening night, and you've already had to pick up a defense. So you've wasted a draft pick and a roster move on defense before the season's even started. And I got to put this out there to you too, Joe. You've already cut 20% of your team. So we're 3 days after the draft, and you've made 3 roster moves already. That's ugly. I mean, you basically punted 20% of your draft. That's just ugly. So that's enough of that. So we got Big Brown, and it hurts, which is John, of course. Antonio Brown sliding to you after Julio Jones. Obviously, you had to do it. Great safe pick. What can you say about Antonio Brown? He's as safe as it gets. Your best pick was Chris Hogan in the 12th round. What a steal, man. I got to admit, I spaced on Chris Hogan. I forgot about him. Great pickup. Worst pick, obviously, could be different pending the results of the suspension, but Zeke Elliott, early 3rd round. That's a whole lot of risk to put on the guy when there were still some very quality, sure things on the board at that point. Ezekiel Elliott could wind up being one of the dumbest picks of the draft, considering that you basically only get him for 6 games before the fantasy playoffs. Or I'm sorry, wouldn't it? It would be 5 games before the fantasy playoffs. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Tony Cheesehead Champ Jr. LaShawn McCoy was a complete nostalgia pick for Tony. He's prone to do that. And he's told me the reason he did it was because, LaShawn McCoy's been on both of my championship teams. Ergo, if I draft LaShawn McCoy, I'm going to win a championship. Well, you know who else was on your championship teams? You had Jamal Charles when he had about 20 touchdowns. You also had Le'Veon Bell last year because Steve's an idiot. You don't have those guys this year. LaShawn McCoy was your number 2 back when you were the championship. You shouldn't have taken LaShawn McCoy over Mike Evans. That's a bad decision, but the season will play out and show you that was a bad decision. Shady is a very safe running back, though. Best pick, Jordy Nelson, midway through the 2nd, absolute steal. Jordy Nelson could have easily been taken here at this spot. Great pick there in the 2nd round. Worst pick, Travis Kelce, 5th round ahead of every non-Gronkowski tight end. You guys know my feelings on Travis Kelce. He's 1,000 yards and 4 to 6 touchdowns. There's no upside to him whatsoever. He's a solid tight end, but he should be viewed like Greg Olsen, because that's about the production you're going to get from him. Except Greg Olsen is tied to a better quarterback situation. So at least Cam Newton will take a shot every once in a while. I absolutely hated the Travis Kelce pick. It was very poor value considering every other non-Gronk tight end was on the board. And I feel like the 8th or 9th tight end that came off the board is just as good as Travis Kelce. So, yeah, again, Tony, purely a rankings pick, obviously, which is, Tony's style. And we'll see how it plays out for him this year, but I wouldn't expect some sort of monster breakout from Travis Kelce. Follow the buzzards. Jason, condoms are for sailors, gotch. Mike Evans, first pick, huge upside. Love the upside. Your best pick, however, was Justin Tucker in the 4th round. He's the only viable fantasy option you have other than Mike Evans. Justin Tucker, best player on your team. I had him last year, and you should be honored to have him as your kicker. Justin Tucker, great pick. Worst pick, Frank Gore. Not because I hate Frank Gore. I'm not an ageist. Don't get me wrong here. But Frank Gore in the 4th round is just too high a price tag, man. 4th round, yikes, man. I got Doug Martin in the 7th or 8th, I think. I wouldn't give him up for Frank Gore. That was an ugly pick. So on to OJ's Revenge, Chris Mancusi, Chris Little Snooky Mancusi, Odell Beckham Jr. Oh, shocker. The Giants fan takes ODB. It was kind of surprising ODB made it to this point, but I mean, it's okay. ODB is solid wideout. I'm not excited about him this year, but he's okay. Best pick, Martavis Bryant in the 7th round, coming off a suspension. That guy's an animal. You've got your Thomas Rawls as your worst pick. Dude, I don't know how this happened. This is the only draft I was a part of that every single Seattle running back came off the board. It's absolutely unthinkable to me why you would want a Seattle running back. They cannot run the football. I mean, Thomas Rawls, even if he was the guy and they're saying we're going to give him 15 to 20 carries a game, I still wouldn't have wanted any part of him. So Rawls, Procise, Lacey, they will all wind up in free agency by the end of week 2 or 3 because Seattle just cannot run the football. On to make better choices, Jared. Well, I got to tell you, Jared, you're not off to a great start as far as the making better choices goes. But another shocker special, Tom Brady, 9th overall. Little rich for Tom Brady, but, I mean, Brady is fully capable of justifying that draft slot. Best pick, Ted Ginn, 13th round. Ginn has a chance to maybe become Drew Brees' deep threat and number 2 receiver. So Ginn could wind up being a pretty good steal in the 13th round. Worst pick, Rob Gronkowski, just because of injury concerns. Who was left on the board? There's a lot of different directions you could go here other than Gronk. You passed on a bunch of the top-tier running backs, obviously a bunch of top-tier wideouts. So you better hope that Brady and Gronk stay on the same page all year and that Gronk stays healthy all year. If it doesn't, that's going to wind up being one of the worst picks of the draft. If he does stay healthy, it's going to be a problem. Cash me outside, Steve Broder. AJ Green over Jordy Nelson, Devontae Freeman, Jay Ajayi, etc. Stupid. Obviously, it's nobody would. AJ Green would have fallen to the middle to back end of the 2nd round, in my personal opinion. Taking him over Jordy Nelson is borderline disrespectful to Jordy Nelson. I mean, AJ Green does not outscore Jordy Nelson in any universe. That was just and Tony, of course, as he usually is, he's usually the main beneficiary of your stupidity, and he was again because he wound up getting Jordy Nelson. So your best pick, though, was Derek Carr, rather. David Carr wouldn't be a great pick. Derek Carr was a good pickup in the latter half of the draft. He's a pretty solid high upside quarterback. Worst pick, I mean, I could go with the entire rest of your draft. It was that bad. I mean, it's just filled with reaches and bad picks in general. But since I said I'd zone in on one, I'm going to stick with the Seattle running back theme. Cheeseburger Eddie Lacy. What in the hell were you thinking about? He couldn't get it done in Green Bay. If he can't get it done on that offense, what makes you think he's going to do better in Seattle? Not to mention everything I already said about Seattle not being able to run the football. And it's not as if that fat ass is going to be catching passes out of the backfield. I mean, I don't know what the hell some of you dopes were thinking during this draft. I'm glad that I had you guys out there. So, stupid pick. I mean, basically, Steve, you're going to need to get bailed out by a trade. Nobody, by the way, nobody should trade for Eddie Lacy. If you want Eddie Lacy, just wait for him to be dropped into free agency, although God knows why you would want him. Best draft, I mean, obviously I had the best draft, but I'm going to remove myself from the equation because I can't look at it objectively. So as the commish, I have to look at it objectively. But I think you guys all know that I'm going to kill you guys this year. But I'm going to give it to Tony Jr., defending champ, the mix of safety and upside. He let the draft fall to him and, of course, just basically auto-picked the highest-ranked player and was the beneficiary of some stupid choices around him. So Tony wound up with the best draft. Congratulations. Worst draft, I'm going to go with a tie between Steve and Joe. Steve's whole team is basically a lesson on how to screw up a perfect draft slot. You were in a beautiful position to draft a monster team, and you completely botched it every single round. Just terribly done. One of the worst drafts I've ever seen, which is incredible because last year you had maybe arguably the greatest draft in the history of our league. It's like this year maybe you're just over-prepared or something. I don't know. You outthought yourself, and I mean, it was really stupid, just terrible draft. AJ Green, DeMarco Murray with some of the other guys still on the board. Where's the value in that? There's no value there. And the same can be said about all your picks. Carlos Hyde, oh my God, Eddie Lacy, ugh, man, I want to throw up just thinking about this. Joe, you passed on some much higher upside players to chase positional runs. You opted out of value. It's never a good strategy. Both of you guys had horrendous strategy heading into this draft. Steve, of course, with his usual coward strategy of I'm going to try and draft every backup running back in the world. And what's funny is you got guys that are the backup to the backup in some cases. Joe, I mean, honestly, Joe, I just don't know what the hell you were thinking with your draft. It's could have had a much better team from that slot. Both of you are going to need some trades to get bailed out. It's tough sledding out there on the trade market, though, guys. It's everybody's in love with their teams at the beginning of the year. So good luck out there. Happy hunting, and hopefully some of you guys that I ripped on here can prove me wrong. Let me know what you guys think about best pick, worst pick, everything else, and I will see you guys with the matchup previews next week.